Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to turn the NotebookLM notebook into a lead magnet website. We're going to use all four forms of audio: deep dive, brief, critique, and debate. We will start the process by asking Gemini to give us the prompt. We want Gemini to turn each format into a lead magnet audio. And to do that, we will need 4 separate prompts to put into NotebookLM. Gemini has given us the prompt for the deep dive. And so we placed the prompt into the deep dive into the chat, and the deep dive has begun its generation. Gemini also provided us the prompt for the brief to be turned into a lead magnet. And so we have generated the brief, and as you can see here, the brief is now complete. What we now want to do is we want to generate the debate. So we're going to copy the prompt for the debate. We're then going to head to the chat. We're going to place our prompt in and then submit our prompt. We're going to allow Gemini to go through each process. We now want to make sure in our studio that there is a third audio overview in generation, and there is. That means then that we can now come and look for the critique prompt. We want to turn the critique audio overview into a lead magnet audio. So we're going to go back to the chat, and we're going to enter in our information, and we're going to submit it, and we're going to allow NotebookLM in order to create the audio overview as a lead magnet. Since the process is complete, we can come to the studio, and our 4th audio overview is now being generated. So while the other audios are being generated, we want to test the output. And since the brief is complete, we can now test the output. We want to make sure that the audio has followed our instructions and does do the call to action at the end. So we're going to listen to the end of the audio to make sure with the brief, and we can assume that if the brief does what we want it to do, that the other 4 audios will do as we have asked in the prompt. We'll now play seconds of the audio.
Interact with the plan yourself. Enter your name and email right now to unlock free access to a customized marketing Q&A bot that chat directly with the 52-week plan. And email thomasduncan@gmail.com to connect directly.
So the audio does what we have asked. So we can assume then that the other 3 forms of audio will also do the same thing with the call to action at the end. So while the other audios are generating, we're going to download the brief. What we can now do while the audios are being generated is we can now turn on the canvas, and we're going to ask the canvas to write and create our website. So what we have done is we have placed in a prompt, and we're going to ask Gemini to make it so that the website will be created. And so the website will be created so that when the user clicks on what they want to learn, it's going to play one of 4 audios. We'll also prompt the user to put in their name and email address so that they can get access to a Q&A bot. Obviously, we don't have autoresponders to connect to the web page at this point. So we're going to ask for Gemini to put in a webhook placeholder so that we can go in and add to the webhook to add whatever autoresponder we want to add. Canvas will then show you both the website preview and the code that you're going to need to put inside of your HTML editor. And we can see that by toggling these 2 buttons back and forth inside of Canvas. We now see where the individual can listen to any of the audio, and then they will then get access to the plan if they place in their name and email address. And what we have done is we have made it so that we can put in our webhook into the HTML. So this is how our site is going to look. And we now need to remember the M4A files, all of which we should have now downloaded from NotebookLM from the audio overviews in various formats. Regardless of how we downloaded the files, we need to make sure that the file names are going to be the same as they are in the HTML code. So we're going to ask Gemini what the file names are in the HTML code, and we're going to make the changes to those file names. Gemini reminds us that in the code is MP3, so you can either change the code to MP3 in your HTML editor, or you can prompt to ask Gemini to do it. Another alternative is to take the file names as they currently are and to tell Gemini how to make the adjustment. What we're going to do is we're going to make the names of our files the same as the ones that are in the code that Gemini generated. And we're going to make the change to M4A since the code has made the audio files as MP3. So inside of our HTML editor, we can do a find and replace. We can make the change from MP3 to M4A as we did here. We can do the same in this section of the HTML, again by using find and replace. So we're going to make all the changes from MP3 to M4A. And at the same time, we also see that the file folder is audio, and we see the names of the files, and we're going to make the changes to our own files to match this page. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to make the changes to the file names so that they now match the HTML file. We're going to make sure they're in the right folder to match the HTML file. What we can do now is we can now save the HTML file, and we want to save it to the directory so that we can click on it to make sure it works offline from a personal computer. File is now available offline. So what we can do here is we can click on our file, and what we can do is we can click on each file to make sure it works.
This is The Brief on eliminating marketing guesswork for solo info marketers.
Imagine finding out that like 80% of the tasks you...
Welcome to the debate. You know, when you watch...
Why is it that the solopreneurs who spend the most...
We've taken the output from NotebookLM, and we've now made it part of our lead magnet website. We now want to go through the process of getting the HTML ready for an actual website. Now, when we place the HTML on a site, such as Google Sites, when the individual clicks on the audio button, that audio needs to play from someplace, and that audio is going to play from our Google Drive. So we'll need to upload all 4 audios to a specific drive, and then we'll need to place that URL inside of our code so that when we put it on the website and an individual clicks on the button, the audio will actually play. So we're going to upload all 4 files to a specific directory in Google Drive. We're also going to make sure that the sharing is such that anyone can play it. So what we're going to do here is click on the share button, and we're going to do the same for each file. We're going to make it so that anyone with the link can view the file. What we don't want individuals to do is to download the file. So we are going to go into the settings, which we can click on here, and we're going to untick these boxes so that individuals will not be able to download, copy, and print the file, but they will be able to play it. Gemini will tell you that you can update the HTML file. However, another choice that you can use is you can paste in these specific URLs. And when you paste in these specific URLs, what you can do is you can ask Gemini to update the HTML or the HTML site. So you don't need to know coding in order to update the HTML site. You can ask Gemini to update the HTML to get it ready to be online. Gemini will then update the code, and basically, whenever your customer clicks on the audio button on the site, the audio is going to play, but it's going to be accessed from your Google Drive. Remember, for each audio, you're going to need to go into the sharing sections, make sure that anyone with the link can view it, make sure also that they cannot download the files. You should still be able to test the site even though it's still on Google servers. The audio is actually playing from our own Google Drive just as it will when we have it on our own hosting or on our Google site. So we're going to click on the play button to make sure it's working properly.
This is The Brief on eliminating marketing guesswork.
So our audios are now working on our site. In the first couple of instances of testing the audio did not work properly. And so we had to iterate with the chatbot to make sure it made the corrections. So we did not attempt to make any corrections in the HTML. We asked Gemini to make the corrections inside the HTML based on our own prompt in plain language. One aspect of the process that we do not have in operation is the webhook for the opt-in page. And for the sake of this video, we will need a third-party service that will help us to create the proper webhook. We then want that webhook to connect to our autoresponder. To operate a webhook that will connect to your autoresponder, there is a free plan with the website make.com. And you can set up your account for free using make.com. Now, this will not be a full-blown tutorial on make.com. we're going to set up a webhook. So we're inside of make.com. We're going to create a scenario. We want then to create a custom webhook that connects to our autoresponder. Now, for the sake of this video and for the sake of example, we are connecting to GetResponse. We will then enter a name and email address. We will then click enter. And the form is working properly. And what should happen now is that the email should now be added to our email list. And we can verify now that the new email address has now been added. So that now means that our web form is now working correctly with the webhook. Once again, this process took several iterations. Took several iterations of going back and forth with screenshots and allowing Gemini to fix the web code until it properly worked. And we were able to test it inside of Gemini using the web form. And the time spent explaining this process is not an indication of how long that it took. We've now verified that our code is working properly by testing it inside of Gemini. We can now open up the code. And we can copy all of the code. And we're going to now move to the free website builder, sites.google.com. Now that we have all the code, we can click on blank site in sites.google.com. Now, this is not a full-blown tutorial on using sites.google.com. We are just going to name this page. We're then going to embed. We're going to click on the embed code. We're going to copy in the code that we picked up from Gemini. We're then going to click next. And we can now see our embed code. You should recognize the site that you created. We're now going to click insert. You now have access to the site. What we're now going to do is we're going to stop splitting the screen. We're now going to work exclusively in sites.google.com. And we're going to use the drag and drop editor. And we're going to drag and drop the site until it fits the entire web page. And our site is now ready. Now what we can do is we can give our web page a name. We can then publish the site. And once we publish the site, we can go to this element and then we can then click on view the published site. And our site will then be visible on the web. So what we have done is we have taken our audio overviews from NotebookLM and we have put them to use on a lead magnet website that we built in Gemini, and we can now collect leads using a webhook to our autoresponder. It's important to note that what you would be delivering to the customer as the opt-in bribe would be a Q&A bot based on your information. You'd want to make sure that it would be anyone with a link, and you'd want to make sure that you copy the link to the chat view in order to pass on to your customer. Customer would then be able to chat with your Q&A bot, and your sources would not be immediately visible. Now, it's important to note that in some cases, the process does work so that the customer could see the entire notebook. So you do want to be aware of that when you're starting out this process. If there are sources that you just don't want anyone to see, this process can leak according to Google. Okay, so thanks, and I will see you in another video.